Now, the exact time when humans first became religious remains unknown. However, research in archaeology shows credible evidence of religion, or at least re- religious behavior from about 4,500 to 200,000 years ago. And what some archaeologists promote is that a behavior that was a behavior that indicated that there was human belief, there was something much greater than the human beings, and it was outside of themselves. They had a concept that the environment that they lived in was created by something greater than them. Now, recognizing by many as the oldest organized religion form is Hinduism. And it has its roots from about 4,000 years ago. So it's fair to say, and this is the right place to say it, no matter what system you may believe or not believe in, religion as a system has been around for some time. So throughout religious history, we can find what I'm going to say today or refer to today as religious spin-offs. Now, we're going to look at 3 religions and their spin-offs to see how they comport to the title of today's talk, which is Master's God. Now, before I go any further, I want to let you know that I had a lot of problems with that title, not only from Lisa, but from my wife also. When she saw it, she said, "There's an apostrophe missing." I said, "No." She said, "What are you trying to say?" And I said, "I'm saying it." So just to clear things up, it's the masters that we're going to look at today and what God that they worship. Hope that helps. Now, we're going to define master today, or I am, as a skilled practitioner of a particular activity. And of course, the activity is the particular religion that they practice. We want to start with 3 religious spin-offs and how they came about. From Hinduism came Buddhism. Judaism came out of a polytheist concept. And then Judaism led to the way, and the way led to Christianity. And from the National Geographic website, Buddha, we all have heard of Buddha. How many people have heard of Buddha? Good, I'm in the right place again. Well, according to legend, was a Hindu prince who renounced his position and wealth to seek enlightenment. And for the first 29 years of his life, he was protected from exposure to the suffering of the world. But at a point, he was able to see what the Buddhists refer to as the 4 signs: the aged man, the sick man, the dead man, and the religious ascetic. Now, through these signs, he realized that he too could become sick, would grow old, and would die, and would lose everything he loved. He tried different teachers and disciplines and finally attained enlightenment through his own means and became known as the Buddha. Now, it's not in the talk here, but I want to stop because that is so relevant for this place right here. Through his own means. So there's a way to spirituality, enlightenment, through whatever you practice. Through whatever you practice. That's a good point, I like that. Scholars Robert Buswell and Donald Lopez addressed the story of the 4 signs with their research. It seems that the 4 signs were written 100 years after Buddha died. And it seems that his followers needed a reason to justify their practice. And so they created these signs, as a rediscovery of timeless truth by the Buddha, not unlike many other religions. But let's go back to the master. the master practitioner, Buddha. And what he did was he taught how he received and how he attained enlightenment through going within. Through going within. And that was his teaching. To enlightenment, you go inside. Let's go to another master, Abram. You know him as Abraham. And Bible scholars settle on what is now recognized as the Jewish faith or Judaism, as it was formed in about the 5th century BCE. Now, Abraham, who was originally known as Abram, left Ur because God called him. God called him. Now, of his society, the society he lived in, there were many gods. It was a polytheist society. But there were two gods that seemed to be the most powerful and most popular. The god of sin, I have no idea what that god did, but, and the god of moon, go figure. He felt called to find a nation, to found a nation, to establish a nation in an undesignated land that later became Canaan, be known as Canaan. Now, regardless of what God Abram heard, the call from, no matter which one it was, what he did was he obeyed the call. And from his obedience came the monolithic practice of Judaism. And again, staying with the Britannica, ancient Jews usually had one name. One name. It's kind of how we all grew up, right? Our mothers didn't call us Joe Smith. She just said, Joe, come here. One name. Not unusual. But in their society, when it was needed, another name was needed, they used either the father's name, R. Ken Turner, or where they're from, R. Ken from Chicago. And that's how they identified whoever they were addressing. In Jesus' case, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus, son of Joseph, Jesus the Nazarene. In the book, The Preaching of St. John the Baptist, author Abraham Blomert writes that Jesus, as a youth, was a gifted learner, but there was no other evidence of his childhood or his early life. As a young adult, he went to be baptized by the prophet John the Baptist, and shortly thereafter became an itinerant preacher and healer. And then in his middle 30s, Jesus had a short public career, lasting perhaps, he says, 1 year or less, during which he attracted considerable attention, which many of us know about. And then sometimes between 29 and 33, he was arrested, tried, and executed. Wow. How's this all coming together? Stay with me. We'll get there. Now, according to dated authored material, dated author, in other words, when was this authored? We find that the earliest New Testament writings were authored 40 to 50 years after the death of Jesus. They were written by, surprise, surprise, Jesus' half-brother and Paul, who earlier was Saul, and there's a whole story with that one. And then 50 to 60 years later, so we have the 40, now we're going 50, 60, Mark and Matthew writings followed with more of Paul. And then Luke, and here it is. And 80 to 90 years later, we have John. And in John is where we find that Jesus is referred to as God. So 80 years later, we have Jesus as God. Do you see a pattern going on here? Let me help you. The followers of the masters after the death decide to create gods of the master. It happened with Buddha. It happened with Jesus. Wow. Now, according to Bart Ehrman, a distinguished professor of religious studies from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, the author of several best-selling books, he writes this about Jesus, how Jesus became God. It was at the behest of the Emperor Constantine that the Council of Nicaea was called. And out of that first council came the construction of the first part of the what? Nicene Creed, the mandating uniform observation of the date of Easter, and the decree of early canon law what would become the official religious experience of the nation, Christianity, under Constantine. Now, many believers today may not know that the book of Acts is where the way was first explained. And the way was the practice of Jesus at the time of his life. At the time of his life. We've gone through a whole lot of history real quick about three of the major religions. So how does that impact each one of us sitting here? Can it impact each one of us? Was it just a minister up there just preaching again? Well, let's talk about preaching. I hope it's funny. We were doing a promotion, and as we got the artwork back, the artist kept putting different things in, and when we asked for one particular thing, she sent back a preacher. And I said, wait a minute, we don't preach. She said, well, I read your information, and I kind of thought that's what you did. I said, there's nowhere on there that we preach. I said, we teach. And she said, wow, that's different. I said, yes, it is. Because preaching is trying to tell people what to do, and teaching is trying to help them learn how to do what they need to do for a better life. So now we have our three spinoffs. We have our three founding masters, and we have three seemingly different approaches. But all of them have one thing in common. That thing where we began. The idea that the archaeologists tell us that early humans thought there was something greater than themselves. And all three of our masters today thought that there was something greater than themselves. One decided to go within to find it, one decided to follow and find it, and one decided to try to teach others what he had found through his relationship with what he called the Father. Wow. Well, what do we think about greater than today? How do we see greater than today? Well, in today's world, greater than, that concept comes out as God, as Spirit, as Father, as enlightenment, as source, just to name a few. Another commonality in those early writings about the three master founders, we would find in all of the writing prior to their death, we would be hard-pressed to find that they ever decided to refer to themselves as deity. 100 years after the death of one, 80 to 100 years after the death of the other, we find that they are promoted to deities. Wow. They didn't ask to be worshiped. So, what we do find that they requested, that they taught, is what? Obedience from one. And he taught that to his tribe, to his sons. We find the journey of introspection to enlightenment and the teaching of that same journey to his followers. We find a gifted rabbi and the sharing of his understanding of the human-divine relationship with the Father of all humanity. How many of you read the newspapers or listen to the news or radio? Or the people in the back doing the people in front? Okay. I didn't ask you what station, you know. Well, some of you have heard that in a recent Supreme Court ruling, it was called Moore versus Harper. The question was posed to the United States Supreme Court, if a state legislative body could constrain the acts of state law based on their authority. You know, we're the legislators and we dictate what happens. And what the Supreme Court came back with is rather simple. They said that which has been created cannot be greater than that which created them. I feel two people that are getting this message. They said, what? I think I'm getting it, huh? Oh, yeah. That which created the masters is greater than what it created. And the masters knew it. Now, how we got there where we worship the masters, it really doesn't matter. I'm not here to take anyone's worship of away. I hope I can show a path to a greater understanding of the master's teachings at most. And if I could do that, I've done what I needed to do today. If we continue to probe what they taught, we will not find that they stood up and said, I am God, worship me. But even with their different philosophies, enlightenment, obedience, I and the Father are one, they all had a desire to share their teachings, to use their teachings as a guide, and to share and give and live the truth with their followers. They gave them a great gift. And the gift that they gave them that somehow got lost along the way is that the greater than. There is something greater than me, Abraham. There is something greater than me, Buddha. I'm going to find it. There is something greater than me. It's the Father, and all can have it. Something beyond human existence, and something, and if nothing else today, please hold this. That greater than, that something greater than, they taught and they lived that it was attainable, and they gave their ways to attain it through obedience, through introspection, and through acceptance of that oneness. This something was the God of the masters. This something is available to all. This something is an energy within us that can be awakened through various practices. Wow, I love that. This same something is the source of all things. It was God to Abraham, it was enlightenment to the Buddha, and it was Father to Jesus. Each of them sharing their own way that this greater than source is available and attainable to each of us. These masters carved dynamic paths, but they were more as guides for living a better life than they were for worshiping the masters. So we've come to that part that I think I do when I come here, or when I go many places, is to leave you with a simple question. Now, put your pens down. I see. You don't answer it that way. Answer it within yourself. Here's the question. Do you choose to follow one of the dynamic paths that the masters created, or do you choose to worship the master that created it? Ponder me that. I want to thank you all for your consciousness today, for coming out on this wonderful summer day. Beautiful weather. You've had so many choices to do so many things, and you chose to be here at this moment. And I thank you, and I'm sure that the church thanks you too. The society thanks you. So thank you for bringing that consciousness and allowing me into your spiritual home. And so I bid each of you, namaste, 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 peace.
Visit us at uusg.org.